Can you even imagine, my dear viewer, that a terrifying entity could board a passenger bus and ride along with them after midnight? And not only that, but something completely unexpected happens because of this thing that got on the bus. I know you might think something like this is impossible, but come with me and let me take you to where it all happened. The exact location was Beijing, China, on bus number 375. This bus left the station just after midnight, around 12 a.m. It was the last bus to leave the station that night, and the passengers on board were only a handful of people. The bus was in the middle of its route when suddenly the driver saw something from a distance. The silhouette of two people standing in the middle of the road in the dead of night and in the freezing cold. They were waving their hands at the bus. The driver stopped and the doors opened. The driver's jaw dropped in shock and terror, and every passenger on the bus was frozen in fear by what they saw. The bus moved on and continued its journey. But were the beings who boarded the bus that night even human? And why were the passengers and the driver so terrified? And most importantly, can you guess what happened to that bus that very night? These are the questions we'll answer in today's episode. For your information, this terrifying story is one of the strangest incidents to ever happen in China, and to this day, it has no explanation. If this is your first time on my channel and you're interested in stories of horror, mystery, and true crime, this is what we present on our channel weekly. Don't forget to subscribe and join my family. Now let's dive into the details of our terrifying story. The journey into the unknown. The story begins, as I mentioned, in Beijing, China, specifically in November of 1995. At that time, a bus was moving away from the Yuan station. This bus was the last to leave the station that day. Its number was 375. It was supposed to be its final route before heading back to the station normally and resuming work the next morning as usual. But what happened was the exact opposite. On this day, around 12 a.m., the weather was extremely cold with a light breeze. The driver got on the bus, accompanied by his assistant, who was usually a young woman's job was to supervise the bus from the inside, organize the passengers, and distribute tickets. As soon as the bus started and drove for a certain distance, it stopped at a specific spot and picked up 3 people, a young single man on his own and a married couple. The bus continued on its way for another distance until it reached one of the stations and stopped. The door opened, and an elderly woman with a cane boarded the bus. She walked down the middle aisle until she reached the second-to-last seat and sat down. The bus started again, continuing its way in the dark of the night and the cold weather. All the passengers were completely silent and calm, waiting for the journey to end so they could return to their homes. During the ride, after a certain time had passed and the bus was moving along, the driver suddenly slammed on the brakes with so much force that the passengers hit their heads on the seats in front of them. The reason for the sudden stop in the middle of the road was that the driver had spotted 2 people standing in front of him. In a strange manner, they were waving their hands for him to stop and let them on.
The driver was annoyed by their savage behavior and the way they stopped him, as he could have run him over. This bus was only supposed to stop at official stations and not in the middle of the road like this. However, against all expectations, and while the passengers expected the driver to ignore them and leave, they were shocked when he stopped the bus and opened the door. The sight they witnessed next was shocking, terrifying, and spread fear in the hearts of all the passengers, so much so that the driver himself was staring at the 2 people in shock, his mouth agape. As soon as the 2 people boarded the bus, everyone understood why the driver was so shocked and terrified. They were 2 people with sharp, stiff, and terrifying features, dressed in what looked like an ancient Chinese traditional costume, the kind no one would wear at that time, long since obsolete. Now, this is not the strangest part of the story. We said there were 2 people, but in reality, there were 3. They were carrying a third person between them, and they were walking and dragging him. His head was bowed and his facial features were not visible, as if he was exhausted and tired. When the three of them boarded the bus, they walked down the middle aisle silently, supporting the third man between them. The people on the bus stared at them, terrified by their appearance. They walked all the way to the last seat in the back. They sat the third person in the middle and sat on either side of him. The back seat is known to be a single long piece. The seating arrangement was as follows. The driver and his assistant were in the front. Behind them was the married couple. Behind the couple was the young man alone. And in the second to last seat behind the young man was the old woman. Finally, these three came and sat in the very last seat. This means the old woman was the closest to them. She sat silently and cautiously watching them from the corner of her eye, tense and frozen in her place from fear. The bus continued its journey. The driver's assistant noticed the fear on the faces of the people. She spoke in a low voice to the passengers in front of her, trying to calm them, saying that maybe they were coming from a play or a show. A few minutes passed and the bus was still moving. A little while later, the married couple told the driver to stop because they would get off at the next station. Indeed, the bus driver stopped and opened the door and the couple got off. Now who was left? Only the young single man and the old woman, and in the very last seat, the three strangers who had just boarded. The bus resumed its journey. It was strange that the old woman, who was the closest to him, kept looking around her in fear and tension as the bus drove. These people could not be human. What happened was not just her being on edge, everyone on the bus was tense because of the strange appearance that suddenly entered the bus. The passengers were suspicious that they were not human at all, and they remained silent the whole way, not saying a word, except for the old woman, who was very close to them, and what she saw made her act in a very smart and unexpected way. The old woman suddenly grabbed the young man in front of her and screamed loudly, "Thief! Thief!" The young man was in a state of shock, not knowing what was happening. She called out at the top of her voice, telling the driver that this young man had stolen her wallet and money. The young man tried to defend himself, saying, "How could I steal from you? I'm sitting in front of you." But the old woman didn't listen. She insisted on taking the young man with her to the police station to open an investigation and asked the driver either to take them or drop them off so they could continue on their own. With the old woman's insistence and loud voice, the driver stopped in the middle of the road and dropped them both off. He then drove off and continued his way. The climax, the unexplained. After they got off, the old woman left the young man and continued her way as if nothing had happened. The young man was shocked and bewildered. He called out to her saying, "Didn't you say I was a thief? What's going on now? You're just walking away as if nothing happened. Let's go to the police station." The old woman stopped, turned to the young man and said to him, word for word, "This is instead of thanking me for saving your life from death. If you had stayed on that bus, your life would have ended immediately." The young man asked her, "What are you talking about?" She began to tell him the details of what she saw on the bus, and the young man listened disbelievingly. She said that the two people who boarded last were not human, but demons in human form. She told him that if he had focused on their features, he would have known that they were not human beings at all. Their features didn't move at all, as if they were lifeless. And if he had looked closely, he would have seen that the long clothes they were wearing covered their feet completely, and nothing was visible. She explained that the only way to expose them is through their feet, because they simply won't be human feet. The young man, in disbelief, asked her, "How did you know all this?" The shock came when she continued, saying that she confirmed it when she saw their feet as soon as they sat behind her. She also said that the person in the middle was the only one who was human, but they had finished him off. When the young man heard all this, he said to himself, "This old woman must be crazy and not in her right mind." He ignored her words and went on his way, returning home. But the story didn't just end there. What came next was completely unexpected. The very next morning, the young man was shocked by the news he never expected. The bus they were on the night before had been officially reported missing without a trace and never returned to the station. The station reported it to the police, and they did everything they could to find the bus, but there was no trace. The police officially announced that bus number 375 was completely missing, and anyone who had information or had been on the bus that night should come to the police station and report it immediately. As soon as the old woman saw the announcement, she went directly to the police and told them everything she saw on the bus in detail, as she was a witness. She told them that 3 people had boarded the bus on the way, and that these people could not have been human. They were either spirits or demons. But as usual, the police do not believe in things like spirits and demons, so they wouldn't open a case against the demon. They concluded that the old woman was probably just fantasizing. The young man, too, after hearing the news of the disappearance, went to the police station and told them all the details. Just 2 days after the bus went missing and before the case was completely closed, a phone call came in to the police. It was from a local resident who lived near Lake Nai in that area. He reported that he saw a large bus submerged in the lake. When the police went to the location he described, that's when the real horror began, because it was indeed the missing bus number 375. I said real horror because what you're about to hear now is incomprehensible. The location they found the bus, the condition of the bodies, and the other things they saw confirmed that what happened was not the work of humans.
The bus was found in an artificial lake about 100 kilometers away from where the bus was supposed to be. The most terrifying part is that all the surveillance cameras on the street showed no evidence that the bus had passed through that route or left its main path. So how did the bus get here? The strongest reason for this is that the gasoline in the bus was not enough to get it to that area at all. So how did it get there? The bus station confirmed this, saying that the fuel in the bus was barely enough to get it back to the station. So how did it travel a distance of 100 kilometers? And the horror gets even worse. When the police opened the fuel tank, they found it was full of blood, not gasoline. But here's the biggest shock of all. When bus number 375 was pulled out of the artificial lake, they found 3 bodies inside in a horrifying state. One body was the driver's, another one was the driver's assistant, and the last was the body of an unknown person, which is believed to be the person that the 2 strangers were carrying. The 3 bodies died in a strange and terrifying way, and neither the police nor the coroner could determine the cause of death. As for the bodies, each one had its mouth open and on their faces were expressions of extreme panic and fear, as if they had seen something that stopped their hearts. And so, could what happened to them truly have been the work of demons, or was it something else that the human mind was unable to explain at that time? Write your thoughts and theories in the comments. And with that, I believe we have reached the end of the story.